In 1912, the editor of the magazine The Ladies' World happened to meet Horace G. Plimpton, the manager of Thomas Edison's film production studio. They got to talking about a serialized story that was to appear in the magazine called What Happened to Mary, and Plimpton came up with the idea of releasing short films concurrently with each chapter of the story as they were published. Thus was born the American movie serial. The movie serial became a staple of the silent era and quickly found a comfortable formula of heroes and villains, action sequences, and cliffhangers. Typically, serials would run week after week before double features and Saturday matinees at specific theaters, and over time, they became more geared towards children. In many ways, they were the precursors of the Saturday morning cartoons I grew up with. The transition to sound was initially a difficult one for the movie serial, however, and with fewer studios involved in making them, they seemed to be on the decline. Then, in the mid-30s, Universal Studios decided to pour an unprecedented amount of money into a new serial for the sound era, a science fiction fantasy based on a popular comic strip that would go on to become perhaps the most famous and successful American movie serial of all time.
No sooner had Flash Gordon and Dale Arden survived a harrowing plane crash than they were snatched up by Dr. Alexis Zarkov. They depart on Zarkov's rocket ship and find themselves en route to the planet Mungo as it hurtles headlong in the Earth's direction. Once on the surface of this alien world, Flash, Dale, and Zarkov are captured by the evil Emperor Ming, and they must fight to survive on a planet populated by horrific monsters, beautiful princesses, incredible technology, and warring tribes of beastmen.
Before we go any further, if you could please hit that like button, I might be able to free myself from the clutches of the merciless YouTube algorithm. If you really do like this video, consider subscribing as well. Thank you in advance. With that out of the way, let's get back to the subject at hand. In response to the roaring success of the syndicated comic strip Buck Rogers, King Features Syndicate wanted to make their own space-themed strip. They tried to get the rights to Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars, but failing that, they asked one of their staff artists, Alex Raymond, to come up with a story of his own. Taking as his inspiration Philip Wiley's novel When Worlds Collide, Raymond envisioned the tale we now know as Flash Gordon. The comic strip became a big hit with a legendary run from 1934 to 2003 that inspired the likes of Superman and Batman. Meanwhile, after Universal Studios had a moderate hit with the 1934 comic-based movie serial Tailspin Tommy, it purchased the rights to a few different King Features comics, including Flash Gordon, with plans to turn them all into serials. Universal's head of serial production at the time, Henry McRae, who was approaching the final days of his career, wanted to make Flash Gordon the biggest serial ever made. As such, he gave it a budget of about $350,000, 3 times the serial standard. The screenplay was put together by the team of Frederick Stefani, Basil Dickey, Ella O'Neill, and George H. Plimpton, with the mandate that they try to appeal to adults as well as children. They were remarkably faithful to the source material, apparently unconcerned with matters of budget or filmability. Stefani was also given the job as director, even though he'd never directed anything before, and he extended that faithfulness to the costume design, set design, and overall visual aesthetic, ensuring that the film would look as much like the comic as possible. To play the titular hero, Universal put out a general casting call. Olympic gold medalist Larry Buster Crabbe, a character actor who is probably best known for playing Tarzan in the Tarzan the Fearless serial, visited Universal out of, quote, curiosity more than anything else, unquote, and was introduced to the producer, Henry McRae, who offered him the part of Flash Gordon on the spot, asking only that he dye his hair blonde. Flash Gordon launched Buster Crabbe into superstardom, and ironically, he would also land the part of Flash's comic competitor Buck Rogers when Universal turned that into a serial in 1940. Gene Rogers, a young contract player who appeared in 1935's Tailspin Tommy in the Great Air Mystery, was cast as the female lead, Dale Arden. Just as a side note, as it has always confused me, the name Dale was originally a girl's name in its native England, taken from the word meaning valley. It's slowly morphed over the years into the boy's name it is today. Despite Dale Arden being a brunette in the comic, Rogers also had to dye her hair blonde, probably to help set her apart from the other female lead, Princess Aura, as played by Priscilla Lawson. Lawson had been a professional model, she was Miss Miami Beach in 1935, and Princess Aura became her first major role as an actress. Without getting into the two most prominent reasons, I have to admit Lawson leaves a bigger impression than Rogers. This isn't necessarily a reflection of the two actresses. Honestly, if I had to rate them by acting talent alone, I'd say Rogers is clearly the better thespian, but the characters, as written, couldn't be any further apart. Dale is the stereotypical damsel in distress, a staple of serial storytelling of the day, and she has very little character of her own, whereas Aura is determined, strong-willed, and intelligent, albeit devious and driven almost entirely by her libidinous feelings for Flash Gordon. I don't mind telling you, I have a bit of a crush on Priscilla Lawson's Princess Aura. To play the main villain, Ming the Merciless, they cast the prolific Charles Middleton, who was a well-known player of bad guys due to his angular features and baritone voice.
Bring in Flash Gordon, dead or alive. If you fail, your life will be forfeited.
This would prove to be Middleton's definitive role in a career filled with memorable performances, and he is singularly impressive as the Fu Manchu-inspired creation of Alex Raymond's comic strip. Despite his infamy as a villain, though, he was reportedly one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. There are two high priests in the serial, played by the actors Lon Poff and Theodore Loach. Poff's character is killed off-screen about halfway through and replaced by Lorch's. As a result, a rumor has circulated for years that Poff died in real life during production, but this is simply untrue, as Lon Poff didn't die until the 50s. Rounding out the cast are Frank Shannon as Dr. Zarkov, Richard Alexander as Prince Baron, Richard Tucker as Flash's father, Professor Gordon, and Jack Lipson in an unforgettable turn as Vultan, King of the Hawkmen. Production began for the 13-episode serial in October of 1935 on an insanely tight 6-week schedule, which, if you do the math, amounts to slightly more than 2 episodes a week. With 14.5-hour days and 6 or 7 day weeks, it was a daunting shoot, even by the standards of the classic Hollywood studio system. To save time and money, a lot of Universal's existing sets and props were repurposed from movies including The Mummy, Bride of Frankenstein, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This dancing scene, along with Zarkov's rocket, were taken from 1930's Just Imagine, and even the musical score was assembled from bits and pieces of other films like The Black Cat and The Invisible Man, with only the main theme composed especially for the film by Clifford Vaughn. The special effects, which are downright silly by modern standards, were fairly ambitious and impressive for the era, especially considering how little time was given to prop man Ed Keyes to put it all together. You have to remember that this was less than a decade after the end of the silent era, and epic sci-fi special effects hadn't progressed very far from the likes of A Trip to the Moon and Metropolis, both of which were obvious inspirations for Flash Gordon. While the big-budget sci-fi spectacle did exist, this was 3 years after King Kong, it was still very rare for even regular feature films to put a lot of money and effort into such things, and there usually weren't large teams of special effects wizards working to put it all together the way there are now. The first episodes of Flash Gordon debuted in April of 1936, and the entire serial became Universal's second highest earning film of the year. It exceeded everyone's expectations, even those of the enthusiastic Henry McRae, and became such a phenomenon that theaters began showing it at night, which was highly unusual for serials. It was recut to feature length the same year, and its success led to more science fiction serials and more big-budget serials in general. This helped launch a serial renaissance that wouldn't really see an end until the television show took the mantle of serialized storytelling away from theaters in the 50s. To call Flash Gordon influential is an understatement. It, along with Buck Rogers, is responsible for inventing the entire subgenre of the space opera, and both were enormous sources of inspiration for George Lucas when he created Star Wars. Lucas openly admits to ripping whole characters and ideas from Flash Gordon, and it's impossible to watch both Flash Gordon and the original Star Wars and not see all the connective tissue between them. It isn't just Star Wars either. In more recent years, for example, Taika Waititi has cited Flash Gordon as a primary source of inspiration for Thor Ragnarok, and Waititi did try to make an animated film out of Flash Gordon that was cancelled last year. It's been reborn multiple times, not only in its 2 immediate sequels, but also in reissues, television series, spin-offs like Defenders of the Earth, spoofs, and of course the 1980 film version, which will no doubt get a video of its own someday. There is always talk of a new Flash Gordon in the works, including the aforementioned animated one from Taika Waititi, but it never really pans out, for one reason or another. To be clear though, the original serial hasn't aged gracefully. Its tropes and cultural attitudes are pretty dated, its moralism is almost painfully one-dimensional, and the simplicity of the plot is quaint at best. The acting is pretty stilted.
You have spared my life. I will help you free the prisoners of whom you speak.
I'll need plenty of help.
And the rushed production is clearly evident throughout. It also doesn't lend itself well to the binge model of viewing. After all, it was designed to be watched one episode a week, and it's unlikely to thrill modern viewers in quite the same way it did those of its time. However, despite all of that, Flash Gordon is an essential piece of cinematic history with a permanent place in science fiction canon. It can be an enjoyable ride, for viewers able to forgive its readily apparent age and who don't go all Annie Wilkes on its way of resolving cliffhangers.
This isn't what happened last week! Have you all got amnesia? They just cheated us! This isn't fair!
I personally love the heck out of it, and I find myself watching it for its sheer entertainment value, completely divorced from its historical context. Sure, the characters are bafflingly simple-minded, the love story is completely contrived, the science is virtually non-existent, and there aren't many themes to talk about outside of the basic good versus evil angle. But Flash Gordon was never designed to be anything but entertainment for entertainment's sake. It gives us a romantic view of science fiction that continues to inspire and inform, and there should always be a place in our collective hearts for the great Flash Gordon. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What do you think? Is it time for another Flash Gordon revival? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also consider supporting me on Patreon, where you'll get access to bonus videos, get your name in the credits, and more. My patrons vote on one movie I cover every single month. There's also my website at emiguel.com, where you'll find written reviews of plenty more sci-fi classics in both film and literature. Until next time, though, when we'll see the dude come down from outer space, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.